Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Sutalasata His Divine Grace Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गिरिधर शिवसरी गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा गोवर्धन धारी की श्री श्री कृष्ण बालांग गिरिराज महाराज की श्री श्री गौरानिताय की निताय गौर ब्रह्मानंदी all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Ite Sriti Te Arpa Vedagite Tvaya Viprishte Cha Sanatane Cha Yevai Pura Brahmanaha Tustam Aradhito Bhagavan Vasudeva Ete all that is described Sriti way Te unto you Nripa O Maharaj Parikshit, Veda Gita, according to the version of the Vedas, Tvaya, by your majesty, Abhipriste, being properly inquired, Cha, also, Sanatane, in the matter of eternal truth, Cha, verily, Ye, which, by, certainly, Pura, before, Brahmane, unto Lord Brahma, Aha, said, Tushta, being satisfied, Aradhita, being worshipped, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. Translation, Your Majesty Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied. upon being properly worshipped. Purport: the two different ways of reaching the spiritual sky and therefore getting emancipation from all material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God or the gradual process through the other higher planets of the universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. The Vedic versions in this connection are Yada sarve pramuchyante kama yesya rida sricha atamartya mritto bhavatyatra brahma samasnute brihat aranyaka and te richir abhisambhavanti. Brihat aranyaka 6-15. Those who are free from the material desires, from all material desires, which are diseases of the heart, are able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God through the HG planets. These Vedic versions corroborate the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the latter is further confirmed by Sukadeva Goswami, who affirms that the truth was disclosed by the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, Vasudeva, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. The disciplic succession holds that the Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, by Brahma to Narad, and by Narad to Vyasadev, and then by Vyasadev to Sukadeva Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all the authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is the way of knowing the knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by one's erudite scholarship or by fashionable interpretation of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted, because the truth is the truth. One has to accept, after all, some authority. The modern scientists are also authorities for the common man, for some scientific truths. The common man follows the version of the scientist. This means that the common man follows the authority. The Vedic knowledge is also received in that way. The common man cannot argue about what is beyond the sky or beyond the universe. He must accept the versions of the Vedas as they are understood by the authorized disciplic succession. In the Bhagavad Gita also, the same process of understanding the Gita is stated in the 4th chapter. If one does not follow the authoritative version of the Acharyas, he will vainly search after the truth mentioned in the Vedas. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. Know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry. So Sukadeva Goswami is making a statement here. He's making 4 statements, I think. But as far as I can see. The first one, he says to Maharaj Parikshit, and in this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami is talking about the purified souls, how the purified souls are reaching the highest levels. And of course, the highest level is to return to the spiritual kingdom. But he says there's 2 ways of doing this. There's one way, you can go through the HG planets. Technically, it means when the yogis leave their body, they go through the Shisuma, you know that constellation called the, what do you call it? The what's that galaxy called? The Milky Way. That's what they call it. So they go through, there's a navel, they go through this and then they go to the higher planets, and from the higher planets they go further on, etc. So he's explaining those two things. But what's interesting in this verse, which I think anyway, is that he said, I have described in reply to your proper inquiry. And it's just according to the vision of the Vedas. And he says the Vedas are eternal truth. So then you can ask, what's a proper inquiry? How do you inquire properly? And why would you inquire properly? And what's the result of inquiring properly? So the inquiring properly means, Krishna describes that in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, you want to have knowledge? So you got to understand what knowledge is as well. Knowledge doesn't just mean you cannot learn things from experience and you just learn and you have knowledge. That's not knowledge. There's apara and para. So apara means what that is pertains to the material world. So for example, how you cook and how you fix a car and how you I don't know, whatever you know, climb Mount Everest, whatever you're into, or do something real scientific like, you know, browse Facebook, something like that. That's apara vidya, which is knowledge pertaining to the material world. Why is it not really knowledge? It's because that changes all the time. Like before, they had this advertising in the 1950s, and they said if you want to get rid of you know, the ticks, the kids, they used to get what they get, fleas? Not the fleas, the dogs. Sorry. What did they get? The kids get? Head lice, yeah. So they had this advertising, and they say, well, if you want to get rid of head lice, and they show a picture actually. They got the little kid like Noah there, standing there, and they're spraying. They got this powder, they just pump it and they spray it. And what do they spray? They spray DDT. You know what DDT is? DDT is Agent Orange. You know when they had the Vietnam War and the planes came and they dropped Agent Orange? That's DDT. That basically people were born all deformed, stuff like that. So they say if your kid's got head lice, just spray him with that, it's fine. They used to have this advertising also. It says smoking is all right, you know, because it's good for pregnant women. So they show the picture of this pregnant woman. It's smoking. It says, it helps you, you know, it's nice. So this is called aparavidya, because later on, like a few years later, they find out that, for example, asbestos, which they have this advertising of also, they say asbestos is great for you. This is a new building material. It's fantastic. And as you all know, asbestos basically kills you in a decade or something. So the reason it's aparavidya because it changes. So if you acquire any kind of knowledge like that, it's useless. And why is it useless? Because in 10 years, it's obsolete. Or worse, it's the other way around. It's actually bad for you. But most people are bent on acquiring this aparavidya. And then you got paravidya. A paravidya, as stated here by Sukadeva Goswami, it's the Vedas. So Prabhupada calls the Brihadaranyaka. The Brihadaranyaka, those verses, they say that real knowledge is how you can get rid of all material desires and thereby not take birth again. So the real knowledge, the real technology, because technology means how one can become happy. That's technology. That's why people invent new washing machine, new hair dryers, because it's going to make them happy, right? Tesla car, you name it, solar panels, it's going to make you happy, guaranteed. So technology is meant to make you happy. So the real technology means to conquer death. That's the Vedas' point of view. The Vedas teach how to conquer death. And that's real technology. That's what the human being should be doing. And of course, as we know, there's a lot of forms of life, from the blade of grass to the topmost human beings. And amongst all of them, and as we know there's 8,400,000, there's only a few. 400,000 out of the 8,400,000, you see the trees, the birds, the plants, the aquatics, the mammals, the birds, the reptiles. Out of them, there's only 400,000 that are got a human form. And some of them, they have a strange human form. Like, for example, the Kim Purushas. Kim means what? And Purusha means a person. And the name is Kim Purusha because, if you translate literally, it means, what kind of person is that? Like, they probably got 2 heads or 3 heads or whatever. Strange. They're not like normal human beings. So they call Kim. But even amongst those, the 400,000, there's only a very few that can focus and think, actually, the real technology is to conquer death. So those ones, they put the question and they say, how can I become happy by conquering death? So then Krishna answers that question in the Bhagavad Gita, and he says, you must get knowledge. Then he goes a little further and he says, how you acquire that knowledge, and this is the point that Sukadeva Goswami is making here. He's saying, I have described your proper inquiry. So there he's giving a hint of what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Tadviti pratipashnena paripatena sevaya. So he says, how do you acquire knowledge? You do 3 things. And what are those things? The first one is pratipanena. Pratipanena means, if you want to translate it literally, it means blank slate. Blank slate? Go to 0, start. There's a school in Vienna that teaches piano, and they interview you before you learn piano, and they say, do you know music? And you go, yeah, I know. And they say, okay, it will be $1,000. And then another one comes for interview, do you know music? No. Okay, it will be $200. And that's because they don't have a blank slate. They got to reteach the people. So pranipatena, Krishna says, you come with blank slate. And which one of us here comes with blank slate? Oh, I'm knowing already. I know this, I know that, I know so many things. So then Krishna says, okay, you know, then you know. You deal with it. But no, a disciple, someone who wants to get knowledge, someone who wants to know the technology of how to blank slate, you come, know nothing. And that's very difficult. Why? Because we have experiences, we have traumas, we suffered so many things, so we react. Someone says, oh, I'm not going to do that. I've been down that road. So there's that intelligence that plays there, and then at the same time there's a request, blank slate. You don't know anything. And there's so many instances in the Shastra that are presented like that. Whereas, for example, Sanatana Goswami, who was an erudite scholar, and Prabhupada gives that example many times, he knew Persian, Sanskrit, whatever, Arabic. And he says, I don't know anything, I don't even know who I am, I'm just a fool. And therefore he approaches the spiritual master with that mindset. That's very difficult to do, because we come with our luggage, I know this, I know that, etc. The second thing that Krishna says, pratipashnena, which is you got to inquire. And inquire means you inquire for 2 reasons. One reason is that because, of course, you're going to inquire, you're going to get the answer. But once you've been in spiritual life for a while, you already got all the answers. Krishna is God, I'm his servant. There's a relationship is service. That, and I chant Hare Krishna and I read the books. So I got knowledge. But it says clearly here, you inquire. And it doesn't stop to inquire, because that's the process of knowledge. So if you want to get knowledge, you keep inquiring. So what do you keep inquiring about? Is it going to rain today, or how much curd is there in the sabji, or what else? How can I get a better mattress? So what's the second reason? The second reason the acharyas mentioned that you inquire is because you don't commit offenses. And that's stated in here in this verse as well, because he says, Sukadeva Goswami says to Parikshit Maharaj, he says, Your Majesty, the Lord was satisfied, referring to Brahma, getting all that knowledge, he says he was satisfied because he was properly worshipped. So what's the best way of to know something from someone? That's a question.
Hearing.
Huh?
Hearing.
Hearing? Well, that's the method, but what's the best way you approach someone? Huh? Yeah, which means? Yeah? What are you trying to do? Yeah, but for what reason? Huh? That's a process as well, but what are you trying to do there? Yes, you're trying to please the person. And Prabhupada gives the example of the dog, if you someone walk their dog and you come and kick the dog, I don't think you'll get any information out of the person. But if you satisfy the person for some way, then the person is willing to give you something special. And Krishna says that himself in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. He says that those who engage in my service, not that Krishna is some kind of a service freak, he just, everyone should serve me because he's got some mental instability that if he doesn't see everyone serving, he just has a mental breakdown. It's actually because when he can trust the person. When the person comes and serves in a way to please Krishna, then immediately I can trust that person because I can see that the service is genuine. So Krishna says the second process of knowledge, Paripashna, you inquire, because when you serve the person, then you don't commit offenses. If you serve properly, if you're trying to please the person. But if you don't keep inquiring, you got the knowledge fine, but if you don't keep inquiring, then what happens after a while? You'll just serve the way you want to serve. I've got the books, I've got my beads, I've got my spiritual life, I'll just do my thing. That's called the plateau. When you come, Vishwanath Chakravarti describes that, and he says, you come to devotional service, first thing you do, Adao Shraddha. You get a bit of faith, there must be something else, and just go to work, it's 9 to 5, there must be a God or something, so let me find out. Sadhu Sangha. You get together with the sadhus, with the yogis, with the devotees. And then Anartha Nivritti. So then when you hear that, you go, Anartha Nivritti, I took initiation, now I'm chanting Hare Krishna. And then from the beginning I joined this movement, I went like this, and then after a while I went like this, and you got the long plateau, there's no progress. And where's my nista? The next thing is fixed. You become fixed, and you get the taste for devotional service. You really, when you chant, you can almost see Krishna. You really, you look forward to that chanting. But somehow or other, most of us, we tend to plateau like this, and God, that's boring. It's like, so everybody gets excited at the beginning, and it gets boring. And why is that? Why do you think you get that plateau for years and years, and it's not moving? It's like you're like in the moving sands. Why do you think that is?
Inquiring.
Yes. And what would you be inquiring for?
Inquiring for how to please.
How to not make offenses, because if you're serving someone and you're trying to please that person so that you get information, then the idea is to serve them in a non-offensive way. And this is why the acharyas emphasize the 10 offenses. So that's the second point. But after a while, we tend to seem to stop inquiring. I know, it's fine, that's cool. But we should know that bhakti of devotional service, the pure devotional service for Krishna, comes from the devotees. So therefore, we should always inquire. But oftentimes we think, this one, I'm going to learn from them. I've seen him for 20 years. What does he know? And the fact that I know better always supersedes the humility that is required to inquire. And of course, the third one that Krishna says in the same verse is sevaya. One provides service, which was included in the other one. But so there's three things. How Krishna explains how you get knowledge. So what happens when you get knowledge? What is that knowledge? That knowledge is, as he says in the Bhagavatam, tusti pustik shudakshayo. It means that it's like when you eat, you become, three things happen. You become nourished, freedom from hunger, and you get satisfaction. And then no one will tell you, you're hungry or not hungry. You get this thing happens. So when you get proper knowledge, then what happens is that you become detached. And you know what's really miserable? Misery or suffering means when there's sochati and kankshati. This is the misery. It means you hanker and you lament. And the whole world moves around that. I wish I could get this, And then when you get too old to be able to get it, you go, I remember, in the 50s we used to have that. And this goes on the conversation all the time like that. So if you get rid of that, this is real knowledge. Real knowledge means that detachment. So what do? You start to become detached, genuinely detached. Nobody can fake that. You can't fake it. You can't fake that, oh, I'm all detached, no, I don't need this, I don't need that. You can't fake that. And Vishwanath Chakravarti gives a very good example about that. He gives the example of the two coconuts. He said the one coconut is green. So what happens when you take, oh yeah, so you shouldn't take the coconuts from the fridge. Remember that, right? So yeah, I just reminded me. So one coconut is green. You take the coconut and you shake it. And what happens? Nothing. You can use just all one mass. You got the coconut, then you got the shell, and then you got the water, and it's full, and you shake it, nothing happens. But then when you let that coconut dry and it becomes mature, then what happens is that the inside, the pulp has grown, and inside it becomes loose. So you take that coconut and you go clock, 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 clock. Then basically Vishwanath Chakravarti is saying you should be clock, clock, clock. You should be dry coconut, not the green one. This is not a bad advertising for Rogers coconuts, it's just a point that the acharyas have made. And the reason for that is because although you are in the material world and you're conditioned, but because you have acquired proper knowledge the proper way, then what happens is that inside you start to become detached, like the coconut pulp. And although you are inside the coconut because you're still in the body and you're still conditioned and you're still functioning in this world, but you start to become detached. And what do you feel? You feel that you're not so attracted to these miseries, which is basically I am hankering or I'm lamenting for that. You become gradually free from that. And this is when you know that you're actually acquiring knowledge. And how is that done? Here it says, Sukadeva Goswami says, proper inquiry, he says, according to the version of the Vedas. So therefore you can only properly inquire about what is the absolute truth. So what is the absolute truth? It is something that pertains to everyone at all times. And that can only become liberated from all material desires, because you can't apply that to anything else. Therefore, if we look at the example given here, very, very good example by Sukadeva Goswami, this was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, and how Lord Brahma did that. When Lord Brahma came out, he was on the seat of the lotus flower, and as we know, he came out of Vishnu on the seat of the lotus flower. He didn't know what to do. He was also confused. And he inquired properly in meditation, and he got the answer by Krishna. So the answer turned, because you got real knowledge, turned into service. And what was his service? He created all the universes. That's what he does. So Sukadeva Goswami hints at that method here by saying that Lord Krishna gave it unto Lord Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. And when you look at the definition of worshipped, it means that you love someone so much that you'll do unconditionally. That is the pratipanena, that is the blank slate. So that's properly worshipped. In the 13th chapter of the... You got a Bhagavad Gita here? You got a Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
In the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, actually, Krishna talks about something very interesting. He goes a little further. In the 4th chapter, this is the way to get knowledge. But in the 13th chapter, I'll just read that and finish it. He goes elaborately on what the processes of knowledge are. And this is very interesting, because oftentimes it's taken as a 13th chapter, yeah? There you go, yeah. So Krishna says, Krishna describes here the processes of knowledge, and you'll see it's interesting. He says, here they are. He says humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the object of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search of the absolute truth. These are the processes of knowledge. That's how you acquire knowledge. So Krishna basically says, you behave like that, you will acquire real knowledge. And that real knowledge will turn into a detachment, and a detachment for Krishna, naturally. As when you eat, you get satisfaction, freedom from hunger, and nourishment. So So become a dry coconut. Okay? Yeah, there you go. Go on. I'll repeat it. I'll try my Shrutida experience.
You're talking about being with blank slate. It seems to be impossible to become a blank slate in front of your devotees. What does it mean?
What it means that you always seek higher association. I think most disciples who've had experience with their gurus have had that experience, because oftentimes we take a guru as someone who will recognize my glories. Sometimes disciples have this definition of the guru, but when you go with the guru, sometimes, it cuts, and at that point you will like automatically get a blank slate. This happened to me personally. I spent many months with my spiritual master, and I was chastised to a point like you feel like a little rat wanting to go crawl under the carpet, because there was other people there too. And at the time it was very painful, but I can tell you that I'm doing things in life which of course give me experience and whatever. But when I got in that situation, I really felt like a blank slate. Like I know nothing, because you were really. It wasn't just a mean punishment, but it was something where you realize actually that if you really want to hear something, you got to forget all your little bits and pieces that you think you may have learned. And then I brought it up to my spiritual master, and I said, when I'm with you, you get on my case like this, and I feel like I'm just nothing. He said, well, funny you say that, because when I was with Prabhupada, and I was the GBC of this, and I was the president, and I opened so many temples, etc. I was doing so much things. Then Prabhupada would do exactly the same thing to me. And I also felt like, I knew nothing. So when you seek association of senior devotees in a way that is proper, not just in a body way, then you will feel like, your knowledge is reset to where it actually is. Because we like to have a little bit of spiritual knowledge, and then we freely lap with other things, the profile, we like that. And I just wanted to, what is it? I forgot what I wanted to say. Sorry, missed out. But yeah, it's a lot easier to, and you see a lot of the acharyas, they ask questions. I think it was Parashit Maharaj in the third canto. He asked questions about the transmigration of the soul, some very basic question. And Prabhupada was in the purport, this is the way you should do it, because sometimes you think you know, but actually you don't. You've got intellectual understanding. So if you want to get an understanding like the coconut, like you get it really, so it's actually loose inside. Then you've got to approach it. You've got to approach that's right. The senior devotees, yeah, that's right, because Krishna lived with Arjuna for 120 years, and they were just buddies. They were sitting on the same bed, they were eating together, they were playing together. And Krishna never once, took a position of instructor. But then when Arjuna started to have serious problems, and he said, well, I accept you as a spiritual master, the first thing Krishna says, you're a fool. And for 120 years, he never told him that. He said, hey, you're my best friend, you're my cousin, we're good buddies. We eat together, and suddenly you're a fool. Because so therefore, when we approach the devotees, there's three ways to approach the devotees, and one of the ways is to recognize if the devotee knows more than we should approach with a kind of blankish slate. Although you know things, but you don't come with that. So therefore, you appear as a blank slate. Although you know, we don't tell you just to, press the erase button and reset the hard disk, lobotomize yourself. You use your intelligence, but the real intelligence is when you approach such people that are more advanced, then you come with what's the deal here? Well, that's proper. Because Sanatana Goswami also was not stupid, he knew a lot, even spiritually. And of course, even spiritually mostly. But he approached, very, I don't know nothing. So the way to approach is very important. And oftentimes we forget that because we become buddies, we talk to each other, slap each other in the back, whatever, And when it comes to inquiry, we go, I know already, who's that guy anyway? I've seen him at least for 10 years, What does he or what does she know more than I do? And that blocks us. Why? Because, then we don't know how to do it properly. And Krishna speaks through his devotees all the time. That's all he does. Not any devotee, just, But it's the way you approach it and the attitude is what makes Krishna reveal to you the knowledge inside, that it becomes actually like the loose coconut, like that, boom. Otherwise it's just theoretical knowledge. Yeah, I know Krishna is God, yeah. Do you get a taste out of chanting? Do you really get ecstatic when you do your devotional service? Sometimes. When I know that there's a... Yeah, I'll just call you back in 10 minutes, huh? Yeah, like that. So it's important that we understand that there's a process of knowledge. Otherwise, we're just after the knowledge. Just run after the knowledge, and we don't understand that there's a whole process, a whole attitude, which Krishna obviously, gives a good rant about. So it's important, yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Hari Hari Bol.